I've had several people request this topic. By the way, you guys can use the request form in the description box below to let us know which topics you'd like to see us cover in the future. So without further ado, let's talk about whatever happened to the Smashing Pumpkins bassist D'Arcy Wretzky. Growing up in Michigan, D'Arcy Wretzky would be the middle child of three sisters, gravitating towards punk and post-punk music. Wretzky would tell Addicted to Noise about her upbringing, and I quote, "My mother always played music when I was growing up. We always listened to the radio. My mom played instruments, and myself and my sisters were always encouraged to play instruments. I played classic violin for about 9 or 10 years, and oboe, and I was in the choir and everything. It was just always part of my life. I've done so many different things. I've done a lot." In high school, she played with a handful of cover bands before moving across the pond to France to join a band that had already disbanded by the time she was set to join. She would end up moving to Chicago with little more than her bass guitar and move in with her sister. It was during the first few months in Chicago she joined a band, and a few months later, she would meet Billy Corgan, who would change her life. Corgan and Wretzky would meet when the frontman was 20, and they would both attend the same rock show and end up arguing outside of the venue over whether the band was good or not. Corgan's first words to the bassist were, and I quote, "You're full of expletive," according to Rolling Stone. Despite getting off on the wrong foot, Corgan and Wretzky shared similar tastes in music, with her telling the Flint Journal, "I listened to his tapes from the band he was in prior to the Pumpkins, and I really liked the music they were doing. I wanted to be doing it too. I loved it." Despite musically being on the same page, their personalities clashed right off the start, with Corgan telling Spin Magazine, "Well, when I was 20 and met D'Arcy, my whole thing was music 24/7, and I couldn't understand why D'Arcy was in music 24/7. D'Arcy was like, I have to have a life. It can't be that way. And at the time, I couldn't respect that," he'd say. The band would round out their lineup with guitarist James Iha and drummer Jimmy Chamberlin. They would release their first album, Gish, in 1991. And it was during the making of the album and the tour to support it that Iha and Wretzky became romantically involved and subsequently broke up. Iha would tell Rolling Stone, "It was really bad. All the normal stuff that would happen between a boyfriend and girlfriend who had broken up after a long time was happening. Only we were stuck together. Under normal circumstances, we probably would have said, 'I'll never see you again.' But since we were forced to be together, we eventually got over it. I still feel pretty close to her." Wretzky would end up marrying Catherine drummer Carrie Brown in 1993, and they would form their own record label, Scratchy Records, which released singles by the Chainsaw Kittens and others. The Smashing Pumpkins sophomore record, 1993's Siamese Dream, made the band and the members superstars. But with newfound fame came its own set of problems. Corgan's controlling style would lead to tensions within the group, as he would play most of the guitar and bass parts on the band's first two records, as Wretzky would contend that Corgan did this since he could nail the tracks in fewer takes. Adding to the tension was Corgan's openness to discussing the band's problems out in the open with the press, telling Spin Magazine in 1993 about playing the guitar and bass parts, "I gave them a year and a half to prepare for this record, yet they continue to keep failing me." Add Jimmy Chamberlin's substance abuse issues, and the band was a powder keg ready to explode. During a 1994 piece on the band, Rolling Stone would interview the whole group, including Wretzky, and the bassist, who always seemed press shy, was no different this time, hiding her attitude towards band leader Billy Corgan, telling the publication, "My mom always told me, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all." The publication would go on to write, and I quote, "When she was unhappy about an article claiming she appeared more interested in applying makeup than offering input into the band's recording process, she eventually tracked down the reporter and made a Zorro-style slash across his face with lipstick." For the band's third release, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, the band seemed to be more of a democracy, at least on the surface. Iha would tell Us Magazine in 1996, "The big change is that Billy is not being the big 'I do this, I do that.' It's much better. The band arranged a lot of songs for this record, and the songwriting process was organic. The circumstances of the last record and the way we worked was really bad," he'd say. 1996 saw the band on the road, and in July of that year, keyboardist Jonathan Melvoin would die after an apparent drug overdose, and drummer Jimmy Chamberlin, who partied with him, was subsequently fired from the group. The band would hobble along for a few more years, putting out several more records that failed to achieve the success and popularity of their early 90s release before finally calling it quits in 2000. Wretzky would leave the band in 1999, and it was initially reported she left to pursue a career in acting. She would be replaced by Hole bassist Melissa Oftermauer, And Wretzky would tell Alternative Nation in 2018 that her attempts at becoming an actress didn't go as planned after leaving the group. In 2004, Corgan shed some more light on what happened with the bassist, revealing, "The truth of the matter is that guitarist James Iha broke up the Smashing Pumpkins, not me, not drummer Jimmy Chamberlin, but James. Did it help that bassist D'Arcy Wretzky was fired for being a mean-spirited drug addict who refused to get help? No, that didn't help keep the band together, not at all." In 2000, MTV News reported that Wretzky was arrested on drug possession charges. In her 2018 interview with Alternative Nation, Wretzky told the publication what she was going through during the time she left the group in the late 90s, saying, "But the thing with that was I was going through a really bad time. I don't know what was happening. I was having a nervous breakdown. I had 30 plus panic attacks a day. I didn't know what it was. It was terrible. The day after the tour, I tried to quit 2 or 3 times, but it's difficult to do when you have everybody, my husband, my family, telling me, no, just wait until the next record. All these people are depending on you, all these people who work for you guys. Don't just think of yourself. I just should have left a couple of years earlier." She would reveal that during the Siamese Dream recording sessions, she was under so much stress that she would suffer a miscarriage, only further hurting her emotional state. She would reveal that in the years after leaving the band, she was working herself to death, stating, "I would just work myself to death. I almost died one time. I had a very large equestrian center with a show barn, and there were over 90 stalls. It snowballed and did very well, but it's just extremely difficult to find people to work around here, and I was working 20 hours a day, living on coffee, cigarettes, and donuts. I had bronchitis and pneumonia, and I ended up with a kidney infection. I was minutes from death." She would go on to reveal that since leaving the band, she lived in Austin, Texas for about 5 years. Then in 2009, she would call into a Chicago radio station, revealing that she no longer visits the Pumpkins' hometown of Chicago and now lives on a non-working horse farm in Michigan. It was during the same interview she revealed that she was engaged over the past decade, but her fiancé had died. In 2011, Wretzky would be jailed after she missed court dates after she was issued a ticket for allowing her horses to roam free on the surrounding streets. After spending several days in the slammer, she would be arrested again and hauled off to jail due to a misdemeanor drunken driving road rage charge in South Haven, Michigan. During the early to mid-2010s, it appeared that Wretzky's relationship with Corgan continued to be strained. She would tell Blast Echo in 2016 that she, and I quote, "had ADD off the charts," and that she was able to live off her money from the Smashing Pumpkins. Blast Echo would write about Wretzky, and I quote, "She says her life is full of weekend warrior variety and imagines her life as James Bond while hang gliding, skydiving, and scuba diving often, saying, 'There's no such thing as a typical day in my life. I couldn't do that because I'd get bored. I'm never bored, ever.'" By 2016, things seemed to be set in motion for a Smashing Pumpkins reunion. Guitarist James Iha would join Corgan on stage to perform a few songs, and the same year Corgan revealed he was now speaking with Wretzky. In 2018, the frontman announced that the classic lineup of the band would be reuniting for a tour and a new record, but Wretzky wouldn't be involved, with current member Jack Bates playing the bass. This started a pretty nasty feud in the media between Corgan and Wretzky. In 2018, Wretzky put out a series of statements claiming her disappointment with not being involved in a reunion and apologizing to the fans, and that she was offered the chance to partake in a reunion by Corgan, only to have the offer rescinded. The band would put out a statement claiming why Wretzky wasn't involved, saying, and I quote, "To that James Iha, Jimmy Chamberlin, and William Corgan haven't played a show with D'Arcy Wretzky for over 18 years, but it's not for a lack of trying. For despite reports, Miss Wretzky has repeatedly been invited out to play with the group, participate in demo sessions, or at the very least meet face to face, and in each and every instance she's always deferred. We wish her all the best and look forward to reconnecting with you all very soon." In response to that, Wretzky would release her full text conversations with Corgan, which indicated the Pumpkin statement wasn't really truthful. She would write on social media, "If one takes the time to read it carefully, one will notice that as the conversation continues, the role I'm offered becomes ever smaller. Finally, Billy says that what I deserve is a t-shirt with my face on it. I spoke with him and asked him if there was any possible way I'd be able to play bass on the tour, and he said no, adding he had bassist Jack Bates already. It was just unbelievable, really just disgusting. The nerve, and then for them to come back and say, well, we haven't seen you in this long and you haven't done this, and you couldn't even make it to this. Everyone has shown up and you didn't. How could I? I didn't even know you were there." Since the reunion of the band, Wretzky has remained pretty quiet. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. We'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.